This is TLC to go.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. You know, in health sciences education, we're always looking for ways to make learning stick, right? And one approach that's getting a lot of buzz these days is team-based learning.
Absolutely. TBL. It's gaining so much traction, and for good reason.
So we're really excited to dig into this awesome guide from the University of Tennessee Health Science Center's Teaching and Learning Center.
It's packed with practical advice.
Yeah, for any health sciences faculty member, this guide is a treasure trove.
Definitely.
Okay, so before we get lost in the details, let's take a step back for a second. For those who might be thinking, okay, what is this TBL thing all about? Can you give us a quick rundown?
Sure. I think many people hear team-based learning and think, oh, group work. And yeah, it involves groups, but it's so much more than just tossing students into groups and hoping for the best.
Right. We've all been there, haven't we? The classic group project struggles.
Exactly. TBL is very structured and intentional. It's designed to get students actively involved in their learning.
Oh, so it's not about passive learning.
Not at all. It's about flipping the traditional classroom model.
Flipped classroom. That's another one of those buzzwords we hear a lot. What does that actually mean in practice?
Good point. So think about it. In a typical lecture-based class, students listen to the professor, take notes, and maybe do some homework afterward. But in a flipped classroom, they engage with the material beforehand,
Oh?
like maybe through readings or videos. And then class time is used for more active learning, putting those concepts into practice and working together.
I see. So the lecture happens outside class, and class time becomes more about hands-on learning. Interesting.
Exactly. And that's where the team-based part really comes in. Students work in carefully formed teams to apply what they've learned.
So are these just random groups?
Nope, not random at all. There's a method to the madness.
Okay, good.
And they also assess their understanding through something called readiness assurance tests.
Readiness assurance tests. Sounds intense.
They're not as scary as they sound, I promise.
Okay, good.
Think of them like quizzes. First, students take them individually,
Ah.
and then they take them again as a team. It ensures everyone is on the same page.
I see. So built-in accountability right from the start.
Exactly. And those tests provide immediate feedback.
Which is so important, right?
Absolutely. It helps identify any knowledge gaps early on.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So it sounds like TBL is more than just a new way to deliver content.
Right. It's really about fostering deep learning.
And those critical thinking skills that are so essential in healthcare.
Exactly. TBL helps students move beyond just memorizing facts.
Right. They're actually applying their knowledge, analyzing information.
Precisely. It's all about building those skills they'll actually use in their careers.
Okay, so we're starting to get a picture of how WTBL works. But I'm curious, why is it so effective? What's the evidence behind it?
Well, this UTHSC guide cites some pretty compelling studies.
Oh, great.
For example, there's one that found students in TBL courses actually scored higher on exams than those in traditional lecture-based courses.
Wow, so the results are measurable.
And it wasn't just about rote memorization. They showed a deeper understanding of the material.
So they could actually apply what they learned, not just regurgitate it.
Exactly. They could use their knowledge in new situations.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And the benefits extend beyond academic performance, right?
Right. Another study focused specifically on pharmacy students.
Okay.
And they found that after participating in TBL, those students significantly improved their critical thinking abilities.
Wow. I mean, critical thinking is essential for any healthcare professional.
Absolutely. It's crucial. You know, analyzing information, solving problems, making sound judgments, those are skills you need in real-life clinical settings.
Okay, so we've talked about the why, but what about the how?
Well, the guide offers some great practical tips. It starts with 4 essential principles for implementing TBL.
Ah, the pillars of TBL.
You got it. And the first one really emphasizes accountability, making sure everyone is responsible for their own learning and contributing to the team.
Makes sense. We'll have to dive into those principles more in the next part.
We will.
Anything else we should touch on before we wrap up this first part?
Yes, I think it's important to remember that TBL isn't just about throwing students into groups. It requires careful planning.
Right. Especially when it comes to those group activities, right?
Yes, the activities themselves need to be well designed.
So can you give us a little sneak peek? What makes a good TBL activity? Don't give it all away. Just something to pique our listeners' interest.
Well, the guide provides a framework called the 4 S's for creating really effective TBL activities.
Ooh, the 4 S's. Sounds intriguing, but we'll have to wait until the next part to hear about those.
You'll have to stay tuned.
We'll leave our listeners hanging on that cliffhanger for just a bit longer. Be sure to join us for part 2, where we'll unpack those 4S's and explore the nitty-gritty of how to design those engaging and effective TBL activities.
Sounds good.
All right, welcome back to part 2 of our deep dive into team-based learning.
Glad to be back.
Now, before the break, you teased us with those 4S's for designing TBL activities.
Ah, yes, the 4S's.
But before we get to those, I wanted to circle back to something you mentioned in the first part
Okay.
about the benefits of TBL for developing critical thinking skills.
Right.
I mean, that's a big one, right?
Huge.
As health sciences educators, we all want to see our students become sharp, critical thinkers.
Oh, absolutely. It's essential.
So what were some of the specific findings from that study you mentioned, the one about pharmacy students?
Oh, that's a good one. The study by Silberman and their colleagues.
Yeah, that's the one.
Well, they found that students who participated in TBL, their critical thinking scores increased by like 19% compared to those in a traditional lecture format.
19%. That's remarkable. It really shows how powerful TBL can be.
It's not just a small boost, it's a significant improvement.
So they're not just learning the material, they're learning how to think critically about it.
Exactly. And those skills, they're going to need those throughout their entire careers.
Absolutely. It's about preparing them for those real-world situations,
Oh,
right?
yes, where they have to analyze information and make sound judgments. Like in a clinical setting, you need to be able to think on your feet.
Speaking of real-world situations, I think that's a perfect segue to those 4S's.
Ah, yes. The 4S's.
Can you break those down for us? How do they help us create those really engaging and effective TBL activities?
Of course. So this framework, the 4S's, it was developed by Michael Stresson and his colleagues.
Okay.
And it's a great guide for designing what we call TBL cases, or application activities.
Got it.
The first S is for significant problem.
Significant problem. Okay. What does that mean in the context of TBL?
It means the problem, or the scenario you present to your students, it should be something meaningful, something relevant to their future careers.
Ah, so it's not just some made-up scenario
Right. It has to be something that will grab their attention, something that matters.
that they can really connect with.
Exactly. You want them to think, oh, wow, I might actually encounter this in practice.
So it's grounded in reality.
Yes. And that leads us to the second S, which is same problem.
Same problem. Okay.
All the teams, they work on the same problem.
Interesting. Why is that important?
It really allows for some rich discussions later on.
I see, because they've all wrestled with the same challenge.
Exactly. They've all had to think it through from different angles.
So you get different perspectives, different approaches.
Precisely. And it helps them broaden their understanding.
Okay, that makes sense. What's the third S?
The third S is specific choice.
Specific choice. Okay, I'm intrigued.
So the activity, the case study, it should require the teams to make a clear decision.
Ah, so no wishy-washy answers?
No wishy-washy.
They have
right?
to commit to a course of action.
Exactly. They have to analyze the information, really grapple with the problem, and come up with a concrete solution.
So it pushes them to apply their knowledge in a very specific way.
Yes. To think critically and make a decision.
Okay, that's great. And now, the final S.
The grand finale, simultaneous report.
Simultaneous report. All right, let's hear it.
All the teams, they present their decisions at the same time.
At the same time. Interesting.
Yes, it creates a bit of excitement, a little friendly competition.
I can imagine.
But more importantly, it allows for immediate feedback and discussion.
Ah, I see. So they can hear how other teams approach the problem.
Exactly. And why they made the choices they did.
So it's not just about the what, it's about the why.
Precisely. It encourages that deeper level of analysis.
Okay, so just to recap, the 4S's are significant problem, same problem, specific choice, and simultaneous report.
That's it.
It sounds like a really solid framework, but can you give us an example? Like, how would this actually play out in a health sciences classroom?
Sure. Let's say you're teaching a nursing course on patient care.
Okay.
Your TBL activity could present a scenario with a patient who has complex needs.
All right.
Maybe someone with multiple health issues or challenging social factors to consider.
Definitely a significant problem that nurses encounter all the time.
Right. And you would give all the teams the same information about this patient,
Okay.
like their medical history, vital signs, lab results, maybe even some social context.
So they're all tackling the same problem.
Yes. And then, using their knowledge and clinical reasoning skills, they would need to work together to assess the situation, identify any potential problems or risks, and come up with a care plan.
Ah, so that's their specific choice, their care plan.
Exactly. And then comes the exciting part, the simultaneous report. Each team presents their care plan to the class.
And they explain their rationale, right?
Right, why they chose those specific interventions. And this opens up a really rich discussion. You get to compare different approaches, offer feedback.
It's way more engaging than just listening to a lecture on patient care.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
And this framework, those 4 S's, they can be applied to all sorts of health science courses.
Yeah, it's very versatile.
Pharmacology, medical diagnostics, public health, you name it.
It's a great way to get students actively involved in their learning. So we've covered the why and the how of TBL, and we've got some fantastic tips for designing activities.
Right.
But I'm also wondering about the logistics of actually implementing TBL in the classroom. Any advice from the guide on that?
Yes, they really stress the importance of clear communication and planning.
Planning is key.
You need to set expectations with your students from the very beginning. Explain how TBL works, why you're using it, what you expect from them.
So no surprises.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to start small. You don't have to revamp your whole course at once.
Okay, good advice. Dip your toes in first.
Right. Maybe try incorporating a few TBL activities or modules and see how it goes.
That's a great tip. Now, what about forming those teams? Any suggestions there?
The guide talks about the importance of thoughtful team formation. Don't just randomly assign students to groups.
Right, because not all teams are created equal.
Exactly.
Right.
Consider their learning styles, their personalities, even their past experiences with group work.
It's like matchmaking for teams.
A little bit. You want teams that work well together, challenge each other, support each other.
That makes a lot of sense. But let's be real, group work can be messy. What about dealing with those inevitable challenges that come up?
Oh, good point. One thing they suggest is establishing ground rules for teamwork right at the start of the course.
Okay, so setting expectations early on.
Exactly, like guidelines for communication, active listening, making sure everyone participates, and giving constructive feedback.
It's all about setting the tone.
Yes, and preventing conflicts down the road.
Now, we've talked a lot about the student experience, but what about us, the instructors? How do we need to adjust our teaching approach with TBL?
That's a great question. It's definitely a bit of a shift. You move from being the sage on the stage to more of a guide on the side.
So less lecturing, more facilitating.
Exactly. You're guiding students through the learning process, offering feedback, addressing any roadblocks they encounter.
It's about creating the space for them to learn and discover.
Precisely. And it can be really rewarding to see them take ownership of their learning that way.
Absolutely. It's about fostering that love of learning. Now, before we wrap up part 2, I want to touch on something we mentioned earlier, virtual TBL.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Because so many of us are teaching online or in hybrid environments these days.
Right.
How does TBL translate to that setting?
Well, that's where those additional resources in the UTHSC guide come in handy. They actually include a whole webinar specifically on virtual TBL.
Oh, fantastic. And we'll be diving into that in our final part.
Yes, we will.
So be sure to join us for part 3, where we'll explore the world of virtual TBL and uncover even more valuable resources from the UTHSC guide.
Looking forward to it.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into team-based learning.
It's been great to unpack all these different aspects of TBL.
It really has. And now, as promised, we're going to tackle that intriguing world of virtual TBL.
Right, because, online and hybrid learning, they're not going anywhere.
Exactly. They're here to stay. So let's dive into that webinar the UTHSC guide mentions, the one about implementing TBL in virtual environments.
Yeah.
What are some of the key takeaways there?
Well, one of the biggest takeaways, and it's actually quite reassuring, is that those core principles of TBL, those 4 pillars we talked about, accountability, feedback, and so on, those still hold true online.
Right. It makes sense. Just because we're in a different setting, it doesn't mean the fundamentals of good teaching and collaboration go out the window.
Exactly. But, of course, the online space presents its own unique challenges and opportunities, and that's where the webinar gets really practical.
Okay, so what are some of those unique considerations for virtual TBL? What do we need to keep in mind?
One big one is technology.
Ah, yes, the tech.
You need to think about how to leverage technology effectively to facilitate communication and collaboration.
Right, because in a physical classroom, it's easy for teams to just gather around a table, but online, we need to be more intentional about creating those spaces, right?
Exactly. So the webinar actually dives into specific tips for using different online tools to foster interaction and keep those TBL activities engaging.
So, like, what kinds of tools?
Well, they talk about using breakout rooms and video conferencing so teams can have their own little discussion spaces.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And they also mention having students co-create documents or presentations in real time.
So it's not just about replicating the physical classroom experience, but actually adapting those TBL strategies to this new environment.
Precisely. And another challenge they address is student engagement.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah.
That's a big one. It can be so much harder to keep students engaged online, right?
It really can. It's so easy for them to get distracted when they're not physically present in the classroom.
Exactly. So how do we combat that?
Well, the webinar really emphasizes designing activities that promote active participation.
Okay, active learning.
Yes. So things like virtual simulations, online polls, even having students create short videos to demonstrate their understanding.
Ah, I see. So keeping them clicking, typing, interacting with the material and with each other.
Exactly. And, they also talk about the importance of community.
Oh, yeah. Sense of community is so important.
It's vital, especially for online learners. In a physical classroom, those informal interactions and connections happen more organically. But online, we have to be more deliberate about building that sense of belonging.
So what are some ways to do that?
Well, they suggest things like virtual icebreakers, creating dedicated online spaces where students can socialize, and, just having regular check-ins with teams to make sure everyone feels connected and supported.
It sounds like with a little effort, we can really adapt TBL to the virtual world and still see those amazing benefits.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that really speaks to the power and flexibility of TBL. The core principles are solid, and with a bit of creativity, we can make TBL work in any setting.
This has been such an insightful exploration of team-based learning. We've covered so much.
We have, from the foundational principles to practical tips, both for in-person and online teaching.
And I have to say, this UTHSC guide is fantastic. It's so thorough and practical. They've really thought of everything.
I agree. It's an amazing resource.
Yes. For anyone who wants to implement TBL or maybe refine how they're already using it, step-by-step guides, webinars on virtual TBL, it's all there.
It's all in the guide.
And before we sign off, I want to leave you, our listener, with one final thought. We've talked about all the amazing benefits of TBL, but the real magic happens when you bring it into your own classroom.
Yes. When you take these ideas and you make them your own, that's when the real learning takes place.
So as you reflect on this deep dive, I encourage you to think about how you might adapt TBL to your own teaching practice.
Yes, how you can create that more interactive and effective learning environment for your students.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to experiment. Try out those 4 S's. Explore those online tools. See what works for you and your students.
It's all about finding what works best.
Because the future of health sciences education, it depends on innovative approaches like team-based learning. And you, our listeners, you are the ones who will shape that future. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
And until next time, keep learning, keep innovating, and keep those questions coming.